Welcome, everybody, to the HRO Sports Betting Podcast. This is our recap show of the previous weekend's games. First game we want to start with is Arkansas at Texas A&M. Pretty good ball game all the way around. Texas A&M bouncing back after a horrible loss there to App State, and Arkansas just proving once again that they are going to be a tough out in the SEC. I really like the way Arkansas is playing right now. They just came out on the short end of the stick. So, T, what was your take on that game?
So I made this game Texas A&M -1, mainly because of the home field advantage. Swung the pendulum in their favor for that for me. To me, this really came down to Arkansas jumped them early, was up 2 scores, and Texas A&M had a big, 80-plus yard, I think it was a fumble return for a touchdown. Which prevented, I think at the time it would have put Arkansas back up 2 scores to go up 21-7.
Yeah, real momentum swinger.
Instead becomes, I think they missed the extra point, but 14-13 if I remember right.
Yeah.
But anyway, right back in basically a tie ball game. Statistically, Arkansas, they were fine. I think KJ Jefferson, once again, had a nice day. Yeah. Texas A&M offensively struggled just a little bit, efficiency-wise, and that's about what this game boiled down to, was that defensive touchdown.
Yeah.
Ends up pushing with the final line, so I know there were some things around that, but we didn't have that game, so.
Yeah, we didn't have it, and that was the reason why. There's just no value. Sometimes you got to understand Vegas knows what the hell they're talking about, and they did. They called that one right on. You got to give those folks credit. A lot of times some of your best bets are the ones you don't make.
We'll talk about in the next game.
Yeah. So with that, we are on to our next game. Was Clemson at Wake Forest. This one ended up in double overtime, 51-45. Clemson, like I said, in double overtime. Heck of a ball game. Infinitely better showing from DJ Uyunglele in this one than I've given him credit for to this point. There's been a lot of talk that maybe he should be benched, bring in the next guy up there at Clemson. But in this game, an offense led by DJ did a heck of a job. You got to give him credit where credit's due. Also, this just also goes to show you Wake Forest is no slouch. It's going to be a tough out in the ACC, and they really played well. They had every chance to win this ball game. It just really boiled down. Clemson makes a play in overtime, and then gets that defensive stop. What was your take on that game, T?
So this week we kind of took one on the chin overall, but this was one of the positives, and this was one of the games that we disagreed on. You liked the under, yeah. I liked the over.
Yeah, I didn't want to mention that, but yes, so I leaned.
To sometimes your best bets, as you just mentioned, are the ones you don't make.
Yeah.
And this was one that, had you bet the under, it would have been another L.
Yeah, in the third quarter, if I'm not mistaken, too.
Yeah,
so,
probably.
It was early.
This game was going over.
Yeah, it was going over.
Hartman and DJ combined for 11 passing touchdowns. They were just slinging it. Yeah. DJ had 370-plus passing yards. Hartman had over 300 himself. Overall, there was over 1,000 total yards in this game. And from the fourth quarter, it was just a great football game to watch.
Yeah. I agree. Real fun game to watch, and the bottom line is sometimes you make mistakes. I didn't think Clemson could put up that many points. I was a little worried that Wake Forest could do exactly what they did. I had a little more faith in that Clemson defense.
Yeah, Wake Forest defense is just bad.
Yeah, it just, moving forward, you got these. It was just a shootout, and congratulations to Clemson pulling that one out. So on our next game that we had last week was Florida at Tennessee. Once again, I had a lean. I really like the Florida team. I have them graded a little higher, than Tennessee. Tennessee was a team that earlier on, in preseason, I had them ranked low. And, what your average handicapper makes a mistake on is not being able to adjust during the season. And I've had Tennessee creeping up, but quite honestly, not enough. And I still have them behind Kentucky and Georgia, and we'll find out because Tennessee plays Kentucky here in the not-too-distant future. with that being said, I'm not going to downgrade Florida much on this one. They were down 2 scores, in the ball game, but I still like what Florida brings to the table. I still like the Richardson kid as a quarterback, as a college quarterback. I think he does a nice job, but I've got to give credit to where credit's due. Tennessee's a pretty solid team. They're moving up my rankings, and that's the name of that tune for me. I got a backdoor cover. Sometimes you get lucky. On that one, T, how'd you see that one?
I had Tennessee favored by over 2 touchdowns in this one.
Yeah, we disagree.
I thought Tennessee would come out, and to be completely honest, they did.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't have any action on this game, but had I had any, like on your side of things, if I would have lost because Billy Napier tries to go for 2 to cut it from an 11-point game. It was from 11 to 9, I think it was. When the spread, it was 10.5. The number was kind of going anywhere between 11, 10.5, 10, right in there.
Billy, give me a call if you want help figuring out just basic numbers and
just
how to win in the football
from
game.
A booster standpoint that's betting on the game, I'd imagine the people behind the scenes at Florida weren't too happy when he went for 2 there and didn't get it. Now they ended up scoring right at the very end of the game to cover that number anyway, to backdoor it.
Yep.
But yeah, that was an interesting call.
Hey.
And I have a feeling that there was a couple visits to his office in the athletic department regarding that one. Seeing as how at the time they weren't going to win that game.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a situation there where, going to Tennessee, that Tennessee proved to me that at Tennessee they're going to be a very tough out. And it's really going to come down to between now them and Kentucky battling out for that number 2 spot.
And I've got Tennessee as a top 10 team in the country.
Yeah, but
Like,
they are in Georgia.
Well,
so,
no, they're not Georgia. But there aren't a lot of teams that are Georgia. But
but they're in Georgia's half of the SEC.
Well, yeah, but I mean
they're in Georgia.
Tennessee's good.
Yeah,
Hooker can play. I mean, he had a nice game, 22-28 for 350 and a couple touchdowns. Also had over 100 yards rushing and a touchdown.
Yeah.
And I mean, the only reason why I think this game wasn't a little bit more of a blowout, and we've talked about this a lot when talking about this Florida team, is Richardson was able to move the ball through the air.
Yeah.
Like 450 passing yards. That's and it's shocker. You throw the football, you can put up 30 points against a good SEC team.
Yes, I mean, like I said, I've adjusted. I think Tennessee is better than I gave them credit for early on. Florida, I didn't downgrade much, and you move on as a sports bettor. That's one of those where I got lucky on that lean. I'll be the first to admit that. Sometimes you need a little luck when you're going through the season, and I just happened to get it on that one. Our next game that we have coming up on the recap show here is Kansas State versus Oklahoma. Kansas State pulls the upset, knocks Oklahoma, in my humble opinion, knocks Oklahoma out of the college football playoff picture.
Yeah, they need help.
And nice win for K-State. I tell you what, football in Kansas is coming around. Both K-State and Kansas, shocking some people this year.
Let's not go that far.
But I didn't say it was challenging for national titles. They're happy they're winning ball games. I mean,
Kansas State's had a nice
little run, but I'm throwing Kansas in there as well to steal a little shine.
Leopold.
Yeah, I do. I like Leopold. I think he's going to be a heck of a coach, and when Kansas joins the Big Ten, he'll get his wish to be in the Big Ten. And our next game on the HRO Sports Betting Podcast recap show here, we've got Kansas State at Oklahoma, and this was a game, congratulations to Kansas State. They did a heck of a job, and in my humble opinion, this knocks Oklahoma right out of the college football playoff picture.
Potentially.
Now,
I mean, they'd need some help, but and we'll see what Kansas State can do the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Oklahoma, a one-loss Oklahoma team would still have a shot, though, I think.
They'd have a shot, but when you've got I'm still predicting 3 undefeated teams going into that championship weekend, and maybe USC, or they're going to have to get by a very good USC and a very good Clemson, and I just really think a team out of the Big 12 over there, really has to be spotless. Oklahoma was the last real good shot at that happening. Uh, I don't see it for the Big 12 this year. But what were your thoughts on the game?
So I liked Oklahoma on the spread as far as the numbers go. One of the reasons why I didn't bet this game, I made it around 2 touchdowns, where I think the line closed like 13.5.
Yeah.
But I mentioned it in the breakdown video that Martinez has just had success against Oklahoma in the past. Oklahoma's defense has kind of struggled to contain him, and when you combine Adrian Martinez with Deuce Vaughn, they just had some playmakers running the ball that could do some damage, and that's what ended up happening. They combined, they had 46 carries between the two of them for over 260 yards.
Mm-hmm.
And Martinez had 4 touchdowns?
Yeah.
He killed them.
Yeah.
And I liked what I saw out of Oklahoma's defense going into that game. This looked like the Oklahoma defense of years past.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oklahoma's offense was fine.
Yeah.
But the defense, you can't give up 40 points to a good team and expect to win a lot of those games. Yeah. And Kansas State, I think, is a solid team.
Yeah, and give Kansas State credit going into Norman and getting a W. It's not easy to do. I would venture to say that's probably one of the few times Oklahoma's lost at home to a K-State team. So,
yeah. That
being said, the next game on the HRO Sports Betting Podcast recap show, we had Maryland at Michigan. Heck of a ball game. Maryland showed up and played a whole heck of a lot better than I thought they were going to play in this one. That back for Michigan, he had a heck of a game. That was as good a Big Ten back as we've seen since probably Jonathan Taylor type outing. He was impressive just watching him tote the rock. And Maryland, to Maryland's credit, even overcoming a couple bad turnovers, I thought during the game. They played it to a 1-score game. So for me, I actually upgraded Maryland a little bit. Michigan, I've had up there, but Michigan's one of those teams in the past. I've lumped them. I've talked about this before. They got lumped in. Texas was being Texas this past weekend. They're kind of in that category with Nebraska and that's just how I see them. Michigan just. There's going to come a time, Penn State, Ohio State, they're going to break your heart. So, that being said, didn't break your heart this weekend. They got the W, but if you laid the 17, they weren't even close. T, what were your thoughts on that one?
Just from the opening kickoff, he fumbled, bounced right off his face mask. Michigan recovers 3 seconds into the game, and then the clock guy actually didn't, if you go back and watch, he didn't even start the clock for the Michigan touchdown. Michigan scored with 14:57 on the clock, which is the time when they recovered. But anyway, Corum was phenomenal.
Yeah.
As we mentioned, 243 rushing yards, a couple touchdowns, 30 carries. He was...
special.
Yeah, he was good. Yeah. And Maryland was just kind of sloppy.
Yeah.
3 turnovers in the game, including that opening kickoff. Tagovailoa threw 2 picks.
Yeah.
Michigan, they did enough to win in their first kind of test of the year.
Yeah.
Which will be good for them moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Michigan did do enough things to win the ball game. They're easing into their schedule, and they've got the tough games on the horizon with the Penn State. I think they go to Penn State this year, if I'm not mistaken. And games, the rivalry games up against Michigan State, and then, of course, Ohio State. Yeah.
We'll get into that.
That being said, I always told, every team that I've coached.
They're at home against Penn State.
Oh, they are at home against Penn State. Okay, I'm mistaken on that.
And they got Michigan State at home.
And they got Michigan State at home. That plays out favorably for them. I know they have to go to Columbus, so that'll be a tough one. But with that... good win for Michigan. At the end of the year, when they see that you're 10-2 or 11-1, they don't go back and check all those wins and see how much you won by for the most part when you're outside that college football playoff picture. So, that being said, we're going to move right along here to the next game, which we had Minnesota. It was -3, and that still struck me as a little odd. at Michigan State. But guess what? Folks in Vegas know what they're talking
I got
about.
bit by that one.
You know, yeah, and we both did. We both did. This ended up being an L for us, but you know, I got to give Minnesota credit, and I got to downgrade Michigan State. You know, this is back-to-back losses for Michigan State. They get a little bit of a downgrade on this one, and Minnesota, they have. I knew they were going to be a contender in the West, in the Big Ten.
They're the best team in the Big Ten West.
And I've still got them as a contender. I still think it's going to come down to that last weekend in Madison to see who wins the West between Minnesota and Wisconsin. I still feel that way, and nothing has really changed, in my opinion, along those lines. But once again, congratulations, Minnesota and the Gophers. They did a heck of a job going to East Lansing and just blowing out who I thought I was a Michigan State team. So what are your thoughts on that one?
So yeah, as we mentioned, I had Michigan State +3. Thought their weakness in the secondary wasn't necessarily going to be exploited by a Minnesota team that was going to try to run the ball. Tanner Morgan,
Yeah, he had a heck of a game.
he was good. I mean,
Yeah.
23 of 26 for 268 and 3 touchdowns. They couldn't stop. I mean, they actually did a decent job against the run. Only gave up, it was like 102 yards to
Yeah, they didn't give up
Ibrahim.
much.
In Michigan State, they never got anything going on the ground themselves. Berger was dinged. I knew Berger was dinged going in, but was probably going to give it a go. And Broussard just couldn't. They didn't get anything going on the ground.
Yeah.
And then they kind of abandoned it. I think they only had 14 carries, which just got away from the game plan a little bit, I think, for them. And Minnesota looked legit.
Yeah.
They looked like a team
Yeah.
that they could spoil somebody if you have one of those top teams overlooking them in a Big Ten title game. They could sneak up and beat somebody.
Yeah.
They've got a veteran quarterback. They've got a good O-line. They've got an elite running back, and they've got a good defense. That Minnesota team, they're legit. I think I had them just outside my top 25 going into the year, so relatively high. But I've moved them up of a good amount.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I don't like them quite as much as you do, but
you're a Wisconsin
I'm
grad.
a Wisconsin grad. I'll be the first to admit it, and they'll have tough ball games at the end of their schedule
It's tough
too.
to say that they haven't
we'll see.
earned that with how they've played.
Yeah,
So.
no, they did a nice job. I give them credit. They went into East Lansing, and like I said, not an easy place to play, and made it look easy. So, all the credit in the world to the Gophers. That being said, we're going to move right along to our next game in the recap show here. USC at Oregon State. USC wins this one 17-14. Favored by 5.5. We took this one on the chin as well. Couple, missed field goal here. Poor, I hate to say it. Caleb Williams was my favorite in the Heisman. Now I got him neck and neck with C.J. Stroud.
You got to put Penix up there too at this point.
Yeah, I think Penix is a viable option, especially if Washington continues to win.
Yeah.
But in this one, it was live by Caleb Williams, die by Caleb Williams, and they did just enough to live by Caleb Williams, but it wasn't enough to help us cash at the window. What were your thoughts on this one, T?
Yeah, I bet USC -5. Liked the line. Didn't think it was. And then it started moving up in the middle of the week. Felt good about a closing line value. Ended up getting bet back down towards kickoff. Closed 5.5. Caleb Williams struggled.
Yeah.
I mean, they missed like a 35-yard field goal. You miss field goals in the red zone, and you have red zone trips that don't result in any points. It hurts your ability to cover a spread.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, I mean, Caleb Williams going 16 of 36 for 180 yards and a touchdown isn't going to get her done.
Yeah. Well, it did against Oregon State, just didn't get it done to cover.
But I don't care if they win or not. I had a -5 ticket in my pocket that lost me money, and that's all I care about. So, they won, and at the end of the year, it's a W in the win-loss column for USC and their chances to get into that college football playoff. But as far as I'm concerned, it was an L because I go off of ATS, not their win-loss record.
Yeah.
I wish they would have ran the ball with Dye a little bit more. Thought he had a nice game, had less than 20 carries, over 130 yards, touchdown. Should have been more of a focal point. And, I mean, the USC defense continues to force turnovers.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, that's going to stop, and that could come back to bite them if Caleb plays the way that he did in this game.
Yeah. Well, if Caleb plays the way he played and they continue to have this type of game plan, they worked up against Oregon State.
Who's a nice team? I mean, Oregon State was no slouch.
Oregon State's solid. They're a good Power 5 team this year.
Yeah,
I got to give them more credit. I got to give them more credit than maybe where I had them at the beginning of the year. But it really boils down to if USC is playing somebody good this past weekend, they would have lost.
Yep.
So, with that, we're going to move on, unfortunately, to the next game that we want to talk about. Wisconsin at Ohio State. Wisconsin was getting as much as 19 in this ball game. I think I wanted to get them at 17.5. I still would have liked that. And unfortunately, wow, that was just a thrashing. Wisconsin was just outclassed. Ohio State was the team I thought they were going to be at the beginning of the year, a team that I feel is going to be undefeated going into the Big Ten title game. I see them beating handily any team that comes out of the West. If it's Wisconsin again, Minnesota, Iowa, doesn't matter.
It ain't gonna be Iowa.
It ain't gonna be close. Doesn't matter. This Ohio State team is a legitimate national title contender. They have a one or two weaknesses, but I've seen those same weaknesses out of the other quality schools that are out there. And what I mean by that is Georgia and Alabama. Specifically, that's who they're going to be contending for that national title with. So
you're probably gonna have to beat both of them.
Yeah, congrats to Ohio State. You can't say it any other way other than that. They outclassed the Badgers. The one Badger bright spot was Allen once again at running back. Even the Badger line was good, not great. Badger defense just really let me down in this one. I did not think Ohio State could put up 50-some points. I didn't think they'd get 40-some points. I really liked that 17.5 that I was leaning towards, and took that one right on the chin. So what were your thoughts on that one?
So I made Ohio State minus 19. So early on, it would have been a lean Ohio State, but nothing closed right on the number for me.
No.
Ohio State is who we thought they were.
Oh, yeah.
They're good.
They're good.
Now, as far as Wisconsin goes, I don't think it's quite as doom and gloom for the Badgers as some people. This year, they just aren't. They don't have the ability or that special talent to get pressure with 4. So C.J. Stroud was just picking apart his own defense. There's nothing the Badgers secondary can do. There's just too many weapons. Stroud was too good. He threw 5 touchdown passes. Now, one of the things that I heard, what was that? That would have been Friday night, is the Badger line got sick.
Yeah.
Which ended up, it wouldn't have made a difference because the Badger defense they gave up 50.
Yeah.
But the Badger line, I want to say their left tackle was out. They moved Brown, the right tackle, to left tackle, and they had some interior linemen that were sick as well, which could have hurt the Badgers just a little bit, but like I said, at the end of the day, it wasn't going to matter. Allen had 165. He broke that 70-yard touchdown run, which kind of helped his numbers. Yeah. But other than that, he was good, but he wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And then as far as Mertz go, I actually didn't think Mertz played terrible. I think a lot of it, he ended up 11 of 20 for 94, a touchdown and a pick. I think a lot of that was somewhat play calling. At some point, the coaching staff at Wisconsin just has no faith in Graham Mertz, I don't think, because they aren't letting him throw the ball more than 5 yards down the field.
Yeah.
And it's just dinking and dunking isn't...
Yeah,
it's just not going to get the job done against Ohio State.
We're moving on to the last game that we wanted to cover on the HRO Sports Betting Podcast recap show, which is Iowa at Rutgers. We had the under. We got 35.5. I really liked it. you can't handicap turnovers.
Wasn't just
You can't.
turnovers. Iowa scored 2 defensive touchdowns.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
like
2D touchdowns.
And then they doinked a 51-yard field goal to beat us. It's like, come on. But
Yeah, but it went. And I tell you what, Michigan is at Iowa this weekend, this upcoming weekend. I like the under again. I'll be honest with you. I don't think Iowa's going to score, and I don't think Michigan's going to get 42 on them.
We'll get into that.
But we'll talk about
yeah.
that. That's my lean on the next one. But with that, for all those people who were rushing to the window and sent that number all the way down, I saw 33.5.
Yeah,
I think
low.
is where it got to. That's a
This
ridiculous
is the first time
number.
that a game has like opened 35.5 or lower in like the last 15 years that hasn't gone under.
Yeah.
Something like that.
No.
But
So,
a loss is a loss.
A loss is a loss.
Sucks.
It was a tough weekend for us that way.
I can honestly say if those two teams played again and they opened that line at 35.5, I would rush to the window and get
that
probably
under.
multiple units on the under.
Yep.
If they played, I don't think the line would open. It would probably open right around 33.5, 34 probably,
I
even
agree.
though the game went over. So I think our money was in good. It just didn't go our way.
Yep.
And that was kind of the
theme of the
weekend
weekend
for
Yep,
us. But
I agree.
it happens. You
Yep.
move on to the next weekend, and we'll be all right.
Yeah, we'll be. Yep, like T said, we'll be moving on. Still putting money in the pockets overall, and that's a good thing. And we'll continue to do that this upcoming weekend. So with that, you got Coach and T here signing off from the HRO Sports Betting Podcast Recap Show, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye now.